Hey guys, it's Miss Sheehan, and today I'm going to do a lecture on the outbreak of war at the beginning of World War I. So I'd like you to go ahead and take notes on this, and let's get into it. Okay, maximizing. So the last couple days you've looked at the larger causes of the war. So today we're going to look at the spark, the thing that set it off, and then what happened at the very start. Okay, so as hopefully you figured out by now, by 1914, Europe had split into two alliances, and that's what you're seeing on this map here. Whoops. So first was the Triple Alliance, which was Germany, Austria-Hungary, here this big guy in the middle, and Italy. And then second was the Triple Entente, and Entente is the French word for like agreement. And that was Great Britain, France, and Russia. So you can see that Europe is more or less split in half. And then as you're looking at this map, also think about the position of Germany and Austria-Hungary. They're right in the middle of Europe, and they're surrounded essentially by the Triple Entente. So this is kind of a precarious position for them. So each of these alliances had what were called mutual defense agreements. That meant if one country in the alliance went to war or was attacked, all the other countries in the alliance would back that country up. So as you can imagine, this made for a very dangerous and precarious time in Europe. And combined with things like imperialism, the scramble for colonies, the arms race, and this virulent nationalism that was also happening during this time, this kind of made Europe ripe for a war. Okay, so the spark that sets off World War I was the assassination of the Archduke of Austria-Hungary, a man named Franz Ferdinand, and he was the heir to the Austria-Hungarian throne. He was assassinated by a Serbian nationalist on June 28th, 1914, along with his wife. And the man who assassinated them was part of a group that was trying to get independence for Serbia from Austria-Hungary. And he felt like, or that group felt like if they killed the Archduke, then Austria-Hungary might be forced to give Serbia independence. Unfortunately, that kind of backfired on them. So for 4 weeks, the Austria-Hungarians didn't do anything. They were essentially trying to avoid starting a war. And they were also busy making sure that Germany would actually back them up if it came to a war with Russia, because the Serbians were being supported by the Russians. So on July 6th, a couple weeks after the assassination, Germany assured Austria that they would support any action that Austria-Hungary took. So at that point, Austria-Hungary issued an ultimatum to Serbia. And basically they said, you have to hand over the guy who killed the Archduke to us so we can try him. Serbia said, sure in some parts, but they rejected other parts. And basically they said, we're not going to really give in to your demands. And at that point, Austria-Hungary and Serbia begin mobilizing their armies against each other. So about a month after the assassination, armies begin to start to move to where they would fight each other. Russia begins mobilizing the same day to back up Serbia. So now we have Austria-Hungary and Russia. And then remember, we have Germany and Italy backing up Austria-Hungary, and we have France and Britain backing up Russia. So Germany and Britain try and do some negotiations to avoid having to back up Austria-Hungary and Russia, but those fail. And Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia on July 28th, exactly a month after the assassination. So at this point, Austria-Hungary is at war with Serbia. And pretty much everyone else in Europe knows that things are going to spiral out of control. So on July 30th, Russia declared full mobilization on Germany and Austria. And so Germany basically says, okay, this is your last chance. If you stay out, we're not going to attack you. Russia says, absolutely not. And Germany declares war on Russia and France the next day. And so at that point, pretty much everyone is at war, because once Germany starts to invade France, Britain is going to back up France, and then all of the Triple Alliance and the Triple Entente are going to be at war. So everyone in Europe pretty much thought this would be a short war, and the rallying cry for the soldiers was, "We'll be home by Christmas," right? We'll win whatever country they were in, and it'll be victorious, and then we'll come home and we'll be these brave, amazing soldiers, right? So pretty much everyone in Europe thought this would be a very short and very quick war, and that their particular nation would win. And every nation had a plan to end the war very quickly. And these are all the plans were based in aggression and offense. That was really kind of the military culture at the time, was that you attack as quickly as possible and then you take everything and you win and then it's over, right? That was kind of the idea. But all the plans failed. So France's plan was called Plan 17. And basically, they wanted to make sure they would defeat Germany quickly. And France and Germany had fought for a long time. They were historical enemies. And France wanted to make sure that Germany would not invade France and that Germany would not have the opportunity to take any French territory, as they had several years ago in an earlier war between France and Germany. So the first part of this plan was building up a series of forts along the border with Germany to try and stop a German invasion, and then also just mobilizing and attacking very quickly. And that was really, for them, the key to victory. It was offense and quick attack, right? So their plan was to attack with all their forces towards Germany, no matter the circumstances. Basically, once war started, they were going for it. The other side of this was Germany's plan, which was called the Schlieffen Plan, named after a German military thinker named Alfred von Schlieffen, right? And the Schlieffen Plan was really based around solving this problem that Germany had. So if you think of where Germany is geographically, right, it has France on one side and Russia on the other. So Germany wanted to make sure they would never be fighting a war on two fronts in two places. They didn't want to fight Russia and France at the same time. So the Schlieffen Plan was really their way to stop that from happening. So Germany, one, wants to avoid those forts that France had built along the border here, and they want to attack France quickly. So they decide to invade through Belgium, which up until then had been a neutral country. And then their idea was they would take Paris, the capital of France, quickly. And then, as these arrows show, they would circle back and then go over to the eastern side and fight Russia. Right? So the idea was invade very quickly, take Paris, invade France, crush France, run back and meet Russia on the Eastern Front. And that was the Schlieffen Plan, or the idea they had. For the Russians, their biggest strength was their huge population and huge army. And they knew that Germany was going to invade France first. And because their army was so large, Russia would take a little bit longer. And because our country is so large, Russia would take a little bit longer to start to move all their troops to where they could actually begin to fight Germany and Austria-Hungary. So basically, their idea was they would race troops to the German front to support France to try and stop the Schlieffen Plan, and then fight a war of attrition or a war of resources with Austria-Hungary, right? And basically, their idea was to throw as many men and resources at the Germans and Austria-Hungarians to basically wear them down. So all these plans failed. France was taken by surprise. Their border forts didn't hold, and Germany managed to execute the first part of the Schlieffen Plan very quickly and actually invade France. However, the French army managed to stop the Germans before they took Paris at a place called the Marne River, which was a river about 30 miles from Paris. So Germans did get really close to actually taking the capital of France. but the French army managed to stop them, and this battle was called the First Battle of the Marne, also known as the Miracle on the Marne, because no one thought that once the Germans got into France, the French would be able to stop them. And it's called the First Battle of the Marne because at the end of the war, there's a second Battle of the Marne. So part of the reason these plans failed is because it was easier to fight defense than offense in 1914. And that was primarily due to the weapons they had, right? This was really one of the first wars where machine guns were deployed in large numbers. They also had things like barbed wire, which you're seeing here, which stops people from getting through places. And then it also had large guns that could shoot huge shells miles and miles. And so all of those things are advantages for defenders, right? Machine guns stop people from coming to you. Barbed wire protects places, right? Artillery can make sure that people can't pass through. But all the army thinking and the officers felt like attacking was the key to victory, right? So they had all these ideas that were based in offense, but really their weapons and what they could use to fight with were based in defense. And that was one of the main reasons that World War I turned into a stalemate so quickly. So after the French stopped the German invasion at the Marne, both the French and German armies began racing to the ocean, and this was called the Race to the Sea. So this is kind of like a simple little map here, but you can see, right? So Germans and French are stopped right here, and then they both race towards the border with Belgium and the ocean, because if one of the countries controlled the ocean, they would be able to use the ocean to attack further into France, or if France controlled it, further into Germany, right? However, this actually turned into both sides building huge lines of trenches along the French and German border and in through Belgium, right? And this turned into more or less 400 miles of almost continuous trenches from a town called Ypres in Belgium all the way down to the border with Switzerland. And it stopped at Switzerland because Switzerland is a neutral country. And these lines of trenches became the Western Front. And the Western Front was really the main site of the war. It had the largest and bloodiest battles. Hundreds of thousands of people lost their lives on the Western Front. And it turned into essentially a stalemate. No army on the Western Front would manage to advance more than 5 miles past the original lines of trenches for the next 4 years. So really, German and French and British and eventually American troops were fighting over a very, very small piece of territory for 4 years. There was also another front to the war, the Eastern Front, which was where Russia, Germany, and Austria-Hungary were fighting. While it did have trenches, it wasn't trench warfare in the same way that the Western Front was. And it also had several large battles, but wasn't a stalemate in the same way that the Western Front was. So most of what we talk about when we talk about World War I, because we come from an American and British perspective, we're going to talk about the Western Front. Okay. So that is it for today. As always, you can ask me any questions in our teams or via email, and I hope you guys are doing well. Bye.